बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत।
ये है भारत एफएम।
बजेगा भारत झूमेगा भारत।
Good evening, India, and good morning, Cincinnati, Phoenix, as well as in Chicago. And good evening and good day to all the viewers watching from across the world. Well, it is Christmas time, festive time. Wishing you a very, very happy Christmas in advance and a very happy New Year. So, Christmas time is the time to bring in cheer, joy, sharing, giving. All these are values of Christmas, right? So, Storytellers Cafe has something special for you tonight. We have a wonderful storyteller from Chennai gracing our studios tonight. But let me welcome you all to this Christmas special on Storytellers Cafe, and I'm your host, Usha Venkatraman. Did you know, friends, we have completed 6 months on Bharat FM. Storytellers Cafe is 6 months old. And we've had wonderful, wonderful guest storytellers gracing our studios, sharing their stories. What better way to spend Christmas time than listening to stories to warm our hearts? So today we have a special guest, Sandhya Reuben from Chennai. I knew Sandhya for quite some years, I think, when I attended the first Chennai Storytelling Festival in 2012 or 13, if I'm not mistaken. And I also had the pleasure of meeting Sandhya in Malaysia at Penang Festival. Well, Sandhya Reuben, or Dr. Sandhya Reuben, because she is a dentist, is a professional storyteller, project manager, qualified dentist, and a certified TESOL teacher. A qualified storyteller and an entrepreneur with an experience spanning 23 years. Sandhya founded Eloquens to train and develop communication skills of an individual, group or groups using a variety of techniques, the primary one being storytelling. Experience of delivering rich and insightful workshops on storytelling for corporates, teachers, and individuals in India, Malaysia, and the United States of America. Sandhya is a certified biblical storyteller from the Academy of Biblical Storytelling, Indiana, USA. She's also on the advisory board member, as an advisory board member and content curator, Chennai International Storytelling Festival. Member and guest performer at the Network of Biblical Storytellers, USA. Sandhya is also a member of the Indian Storytelling Network, working closely for various assignments with its Indian and international storytellers. She's a guest performer and storyteller, multicultural church congregations, Houston, Texas, United States. Sandhya completed her TEFL certification, specializing in Young Learners Asian College of Teachers. So, Sandhya is not only a wonderful storyteller, but she's going to talk to us about how she got into biblical storytelling, because I'm curious. I do want to know about it. So, Storytellers Cafe is indeed very happy and proud to present Sandhya Reuben for our Christmas special. Welcome, Sandhya, to Storytellers Cafe.
Hello, Usha. It's a matter of pride and honor for me to be here this evening hour in India and morning hour in the USA. Thank you for having
And
me.
oh, no, it's our pleasure, Sandhya. I had already shortlisted you for the Christmas special. I had a few storytellers for the Christmas special. Like I told you all, friends, Sandhya is a wonderful, wonderful storyteller. She has a beautiful voice, and I'm sure you will be mesmerized when you listen to her stories. So, Sandhya, what do you have for us on this Christmas special?
Well, since it's the joy of giving and the season is so magical and it's got a certain quality to it, which is just not it's not restricted to one country. It's global. I have two stories from the Global Treasure House. So I'm doing one by Pavel Bazov, a very popular Russian author, and I'm doing one by an American literature figure, Louisa May Alcott. So I'll be flipping between these two stories, one from the very far east and one from the very far west.
Wonderful. What better way? I think we storytellers connect the east to the west and north to the south. I had somebody telling me not only do we connect, we blend. So I think that's what we do. And like you said, this is the season for giving. So without any other thing, so Sandhya, go ahead and plunge into your stories, and we are all ears.
Thank you, Usha. I bring you this story from a treasure trove of tales called The Malachite Casket, a very popular piece of literature that was written by Pavel Bazov when the USSR was an entity to reckon with. This story goes back to 1936, and for listeners, a garland of gold, and may the story come back always to be told. So once there were two men who lived far, far, far from the Moscow River. And these two men were going out to see how their hayfield was coming up. It was time to go out on a long, long walk. And what better way and what better day to go on a walk than on a Sunday afternoon? Picture perfect. The grass was just washed green. The smell of petrichor clung to their nostrils. A gentle breeze was blowing. It was almost whistling a merry tune. And both these men set out on their long walk across the mountains, down the valleys to go to see their hayfield. Now, what I must also tell you, friends, is that this setting is just at the backdrop of the mountains where iron ore is mined. So off went the two men, one of whom was pretty old, and his cheeks were sunken and hollow. His eyes were literally in his eye socket, and he had the miner's cough. He would keep coughing continuously. On the other hand, the other lad was a picture of perfect health. He was tall and able bodied, broad shouldered, with the most brilliant blue eyes and a shock of golden yellow hair. And Stefan was his name. So off they went, and they had a very, very long journey to make. And when they came to the hayfields, it was almost the height of the afternoon, but still the sun was kind to them. So they lay down under a tree and went to sleep. The old one went to sleep just as soon as his head hit the grass floor, but Stefan took a while. Suddenly, he felt a nudging, and he looked all about him, and far into the distance he saw a maiden. Yes, he saw a maiden whose braid was long and black and ramrod straight. It clung to her back like almost a second skin. And by the braid, he knew that she was unmarried. And the ribbons of the braid, oh my, I cannot begin to tell you how they looked. They were neither red, they were neither green. They were a brilliant shade of blue. And one could almost hear the ribbons tinkle like they were made out of iron ore leaves. And suddenly it hit young Stephen that probably this could be the mistress of the Malachite mountain. And he thought to himself, oh no, I'm doomed. Should she turn and should she look at me? I'm doomed if she speaks a word to me, because I have heard legends and lores from my grandmothers and the other babushkas about how cruel the mistress of the Copper Mountain can be. And immediately as he thought that, the maiden swung around to face him face to face. Their eyes met and they were locked for some time, so that Stephen could take in the beauty of the mistress of the Malachite mountain, or the Malachite maid, as she was called in those hills yonder. She had ruby red lips, skin of alabaster, eyes that were a brilliant shade of marble green, and long, long black hair that was braided tightly into a braid. And every time she spoke, it was like laughter was bouncing off of her lips and falling on like gentle dewdrops on the ground. And it looked to Stephen like she was talking something very, very merry. And he thought to turn away when the maid called out to Stephen and said, young man, don't you think that there is a fee for peeping? You must pay for the peep, because all said and done, I am the mistress of the Malachite mountain and I want to have a little chat with you. So Stephen quickly composed himself, though his heart was thumping inside him at double the speed that it normally would. And Stephen said, I have slept too long. I must go on my way and I must see how the hayfields are doing. I have no time to talk to you. But the maiden cajoled him and took him by hand and said, come unto me as I sit on this stone, and I have something important to tell you. The suspense was too much for Stephen to bear, so he began to make his way towards the maid of the mountain. Suddenly, his path was littered with butterflies of all colors. They ranged in shade from an angry red to a brilliant yellow, an ochre, an amber, a sapphire, an emerald, lapis lazuli, with golden specks on their backs. And soon he realized that he could not even take one step closer to the maid of the mountain. It was like a beautifully patterned mosaic and a carpet. The maid of the mountain snapped her fingers, and in an instant the path was laid bare. Stephen took one step at a time to reach the maid of the Malachite mountain. And the moment he reached her, she snapped her fingers two more times, and the butterflies came back, surrounding his path so he wouldn't beat a hasty retreat, my friends. You see, some men are insanely scared of great beauty, and Stephen was no exception to this rule. The maid of the mountain laughed out loud at Stephen and said, I'm not going to harm you, Stephen. I do nobody a harm. And an instant, Stephen was angered because his male ego was pierced somewhere. He said, I'm not afraid of what you can do to me, because you know I work down in the deep dark mines. And the maid said, that is exactly the quality I've been looking for. Somebody fearless. Stephen, I have a message to give to the bailiff who owns these copper mountains. Will you pass it on to him? And I want you to repeat it word for word. So Stephen fumbled and bumbled a bit, and then the maid gave the message. She said, get out of the mountain, you stinking goat. Get out of my mountains. And if you mine some more ore over my cap of iron, I promise I will sink these copper mines deep, deep, deep down in Gumeshki, and you will find none of it for years on end. Stephen was startled at such a harsh message. But the maid said, if you deliver this message to the bailiff, I can even marry you, Stephen. And she laughed out loud. And in an instant, She transformed herself into a giant lizard-like creature. It had green paws and it had a green tail and a body, and right down the middle passed a black, dark line. And Stephen looked at her with disgust, and he said, "Marry you? An insect that crawls on all fours?" "Ha ha," said the maid of the mountain. "That's talk for another time, dear Stephen. Off you go on your way to meet the bailiff and give him the message that I gave you." Stephen went back home after looking at the hayfields, and he was pacing the floor that night, wondering how a serf like him, a slave like him, could go and give a message to the bailiff, and a message that sounded so rude at that. He paced and paced and paced until morning came. He didn't want to sound like an empty braggart in front of the maid of the mountain. So, as the miners were lined up near the cage, waiting to be let down into the deep recesses of the earth, the bailiff came, and the men removed their hats and held it close to their chest and stood in perfect silence, all except Stephen. He quickly marched up to the bailiff. He looked at him in the eye and said, "I met the mistress of the Malachite mountain, and I have a message for you. Get out of the mountain, you stinky goat. Get out of my mountain. And if I see you mine any ore from the top of my cap, I will sink the copper mines deep, deep, deep into Gumechi, that you will never be able to find one for years on end." The bailiff was shocked that a naive serf like Stephen would give him such a harsh message. And he looked at him and said, "Are you drunk? Are you daft? Or have you just been possessed by a demoness?" He summoned his overseer and he said, "Lock up Stephen in the deep, dark recesses of the mines. Fetter him hand and foot. Give him only a little elbow room so he can axe and he can pick at those mountains. Feed him the oats that the dogs eat, and let him learn a lesson. Ah, let him learn a lesson that nobody messes with the bailiff of the copper mines." And the overseer, who was as large as a cur himself, came and bound Stephen hand and foot into iron chains and left him at the wettest and darkest parts of those copper mines. Now, Stephen, being able bodied, like I already told you, took out his pick and started picking at the stones that he saw in front of him. And believe it or not, in an instant or two, out tumbled a huge mountain of malachite. And Stephen thought to himself, "Well, I have the mistress's favor." And he took a step backward and he sighed. And soon there was a blinding flash of light, and in front of him stood the mistress herself. Their eyes locked one more time, and they stood transfixed, one gazing at the other. The mistress snapped her fingers twice, and out came a ruby red butterfly and untied the chains on Stephen's wrists and on his legs. And the mistress gave Stephen a simple instruction: "Follow me. Follow me, Stephen, for we have a path to go on." The mistress led from the front, and Stephen walked 2 paces behind. The mistress went on into the deep heart of the mountains, and everywhere she turned, a magical chamber opened up. Sometimes the walls were covered with brilliant blue lapis lazuli. Sometimes they shimmered as a clear river of crystal. Sometimes they were as green as an emerald. Sometimes they were yellow. They were ochre. They were amber. And every time the mistress entered the chamber, her robe, oh, the beauty of her robe. Every time she turned into the chamber, her robe would assume the color of that chamber, and Stephen could not stop feasting his eyes on such beauty. Finally, the mistress brought Stephen to her chamber, and she looked at him and said, "Apart from the mines in Gimashki, this is my most favorite place on earth, Stephen. Why don't you have a seat?" She looked at him alluringly and sat him down on a stool made of pure copper. She asked him, "Stephen, do you see my dowry? Do you see the mountains of malachite that change and shimmer and gleam according to every mood of mine? How would you like to marry me now, Stephen?" And Stephen was dumbstruck. He said, "Mistress, this dowry is fit for the Tsar himself. How could a serf like me marry you?" And he looked down at his poor, withered shoes. The mistress looked up at him and said, "Stephen, you are promised and betrothed, aren't you?" For an instant, Stephen felt a flutter in his heart, but he looked up at the mistress and said, "Yes, mistress, I'm promised." And so the mistress said, "You have passed my second test. You are honest and you are noble, and I know that Anastasia and you will have a lovely marriage. You will have many children, and you will remain happy, and I will ensure that you get out of the bailiff's way. But Stephen, since I have looked at you, since I have loved you, I have a parting gift for you. Will you please take this casket of malachite with you when you go your way? It has jewels that have never been seen by human eye. The most beautiful necklaces, the most beautiful bracelets and finger rings, the most beautiful earrings and warm chokers, they will help you on a rainy day. Here you go, Stephen, my favored one. Take the malachite casket with you and hide it because you might need it someday." And as Stephen took the casket from the mistress's hand, she turned around and she bent down, and tears started falling down from her eyes. And she caught them in the palm of her beautiful, graceful hand, drop by drop by drop. And these teardrops transformed themselves into emerald green stones of the highest quality that money could buy. She took these stones and pressed them into the palm of Stephen's hand. He felt the chill of the emerald stones, and he felt the heat of the mistress's hand, and he was a man transformed forever because something had been lost in those malachite mountains that evening. A part of his soul was sucked out by the mistress of the malachite mountain, and she quickly turned away from him and said, "Go, Stephen, go in peace." And the same ruby red butterfly that had freed him brought him back to the mine and shackled his feet and his wrists once more. And the casket, you wonder, my friends, was miraculously transformed so he could put it inside his shirt. And all through the evening, Stephen labored, and when it was before dark, the bailiff came to look upon Stephen's progress, and he was shocked to see a mountain of malachite before his eyes. And he said, "Ah, my friends, Stephen has sold his soul to the devil. Oh, this is very bad, but I don't care whether he sold his soul to the devil or not, but I want more malachite from these mountains." And so the overseer said, "Two more mountains of malachite like these, Stephen, and soon you'll be a free man." And all Stephen had to do was raise his pick and gently bang on the stone, and in an instant, two mountains of malachite, glimmering green, appeared before the eyes of the bailiff, who could not hold this any longer. And he called the owner all the way from Moscow to come and take a look at these beautiful malachite mountains. It was the next day by then. And the owner said, "If you gave me 5 of these malachite mountains, Stephen, you will be a free man." But you see, my friend, slavery has its own share of smartness.
Stephen would not be fooled by this promise now. So he told the owner, "Write it to me on a piece of paper that I will be free to go and I will bring up 5 such mountains for you." But wait, I am married, or I am betrothed. I'm about to be married to this woman called Anastasia, who is also a serf in your mines. Write me another paper that you will free her, because a free man cannot marry a slave woman. And so the papers were signed, and before they could say anything, from their very sides emerged 5 majestic mountains of malachite. The owner was happy beyond compare, and he ordered these to be made into 5 strong pillars. These pillars found a home in a church in the capital, and Stephen was a free man. He married the love of his life, Nastasia, and they rented a small, humble home in those hills. They had children, they had cattle, and they had the malachite casket to fall back on during rainy days, which Stephen had so willingly shared with the love of his life, Nastasia. Everything was fine, but Stephen was not. He had lost a part of his soul in those mountains of green malachite. The love made him sick, and one day he was so sick that he decided to take his shotgun and go a hunting into those mountains. Many times he would go hunting but bring nothing back home. But tonight, my friends, was a different night. His soul was yearning to look at those beautiful marble green eyes of the maid of malachite. His soul was yearning to feel her long black braids hanging down her back. His soul was yearning to plant a kiss on those ruby red lips. And he was a man consumed by love. He picked up his shotgun and he went out hunting. And soon news reached the village that Stephen was dead. The people went to look for him, and they found Stephen lying like an angel with his fists closed. And legend has it that there was a great green lizard with a black stripe running on its back that was sitting near the rock and shedding tears onto Stephen's hand. And every time a tear was shed, it would fall into Stephen's hand. And soon people were unclasping the fist of Stephen to see these beautiful emerald stones. They brought Stephen back to his house and laid him to rest. And when they touched one of those emerald stones, it crumbled into fine emerald dust that could not be sold even for a ruble's worth. Stephen was consumed with love for the mistress of the mountain, and he died pining and yearning for her love. It is true, my friends, that the mistress gives you the joy of knowing her. The mistress gives you the joy of knowing her deeply, but she also gives you a heartache. It's a matter of chance that you see the beautiful maid of Malachite, the mistress of the copper mountains of Gumeshki. Woe to you if you're a bad man, my friend. Woe to you. But if you're a good man, I would warn you tonight. If you were a good wife, I would warn you tonight. Never let the men roam to go out and check on their hay fields, because the mistress of the copper mountain might be lurking somewhere beneath. That's Vizania, and that brings me to the end of my first story.
Bravo, bravo, Sandhya. What a fantastic story. The mistress of the Malachite, the green Malachite mountains. Indeed, a wonderful, wonderful. You took us to the land of the czars, czarinas, babushkas,
Yeah.
and serfs. Fantastic. What made you choose this story?
there is, when USSR was an entity to reckon with, and they were not, divided up into all these countries that we see now. There used to be a book fair that happened every year at my school in Chennai, and it used to be run by the Russian consulate at Chennai, and they would bring beautiful books. And the Malachite Mountain, the Mistress of the Malachite Mountain, was the first book that I purchased with my pocket money in '85. And the first story that I read was this one, and that's almost 30 years back. And it has stayed imprinted in my memory for the powerful images the story brings out. The shades of blue and green, you could never forget. So, this is a story that I hold very dear to my heart. And I also made up a song that went with Stephen's, Look Out for the Maid of the Copper Mountain. Would you like to hear it?
Okay. We
So, the
just
song.
lost. Yes, Sandhya, go ahead. We just lost you for a minute.
Okay, so I was telling you that I wrote a song, and I composed it to tune, understanding the grief that Stephen was going through. It's just a four-liner. Let me sing it for you.
Sure, please.
Oh maiden, why do you cry? From the mountains of copper and green malachite. Oh maiden, whom do you want? From the valleys or mountains or from the river beyond?
Lovely. Very, very nice, Sandhya. Beautiful. It's like Christmas. And what do you say, guys? Let's listen to a story. Enough of conversations and expressions. I think it's time to listen to stories. So, Sandhya, if you feel that you have had a little break between your stories, because your stories are wonderful. I mean, they are like an epic. It's got everything in it. So, what is the second story that you have for us? Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yes, this is an uplifting story. It's not so enigmatic like The Mistress of the Copper Mountain. Written by Louisa May Alcott. It's like a children's ode to Charles Dickens's very popular Christmas Carol.
Okay.
It's a beautiful story of a young child who has a dream, and how it was the Christmas dream and how it came true. That's my story.
Okay. Lovely. We would love to. I just want to ask you one question in between. I mean, you can just tell us in brief, how did you get into biblical storytelling? How did you venture into that field?
You know,
Uh,
sorry, I knew that if you had to be a storyteller, you had to have a niche. And I travel around the country talking and, counseling women who are illiterate. They cannot read, they don't have the power of the word. So I decided what better way to reach out and counsel them other than using story. So my quest for biblical storytelling began about 5 years ago. And then I found this wonderful network of Biblical Storytellers International, who were coaching people to be biblical storytellers. And for me, it was page off to the off the page and onto the stage, as they say. And I've been certified by them recently with my bachelor's, and I'm going to be doing my master's. It's where you bring out the treasure trove of stories from the Bible, you give it life, and it becomes animated and as real as flesh in front of you. So
Absolutely. And I know you will do full justice with your description and with your uh, powerful performance storytelling.
thank you.
Excellent. I wish you all the best. Storytellers Cafe wishes you all success for your master's program.
Thank you.
So now we are ready to listen to your second story for the
All
evening.
right. All right. I'm so tired of this Christmas, mummy. I don't like these stockings that you stuff so high. I don't like the presents that you're wrapping to put under the tree. Everything is so boring, Mom, said Effie, a teeny tiny 7-year-old who was already disgruntled with Christmas. And Mummy said, Effie, you shouldn't be saying such things. Otherwise, you'll end up like Uncle Scrooge in Charles Dickens's book, The Christmas Carol. So Effie was looking around for something to eat and she was not in the mood for something sweet. So she picked up a sour lemon drop, chewed on it, and said, Mom, what's the Christmas Carol all about? And Mommy said, Well, darling, that's a story for you in the library. You'll find it right by the fireplace. It was written by Charles Dickens, and it deals with this man called Uncle Scrooge who didn't like Christmas one itsy bitsy teeny weeny bit. But he had a dream, and everything changed for him that night. So Effie said, Well, Mama, I also have great dreams, and maybe I might have one just after reading this book. And she pressed her little button nose onto the glass window of a beautiful mansion, and she saw a poor little girl skipping with torn shoes through the snow. And the little girl was chewing on a piece of boiled potato like she was eating her Christmas lunch. And she even licked her lips like she was eating ice cream. Ma, I really wish I was as poor as that girl. She's so happy without having people to run behind her and fuss after her and ask her to wear her boots and her cloak and her winter clothes. Mummy, I wish I were a beggar girl. So mother said, Effie, would it be all right if I didn't give you any presents this Christmas? And Effie said, Of course, you give me the same kind of bunny rabbits and the baubles that I have no use for. I eat such a large Christmas lunch that I get sick the next morning, and I don't want to do the same things that I did before. I want one big surprise that I can remember, and I want one small surprise that I can hold on to, Mother. And Mother said, Well, Effie, since I love you so much, I think I'll be able to bring something up for you. Now run along, it's bedtime. She patted Effie off her back, and Effie was being combed in the nursery by her nanny. And she was sitting in a warm fur-skin jacket and fur-skin lined boots. And in her hands was the copy of the Christmas Carol. Though she was too young to understand it, she laughed at some parts. She cried with the others. She wondered with the others. And soon a kiss was planted on the middle of her forehead, and off she went to sleep. And that night, she had a dream that would change her Christmas forever. In her dream, she was sitting on a large rock, and a snowstorm was coming her way. She was feeling chill and cold and almost frozen in that snowstorm. And she said, I thought I would be happy being cold. I thought I would happy being a beggar girl, but now I don't like this anymore. And tears started pouring down her eyes, and they froze as icicles because the snow was really beating down hard that night. And in her dream, she saw a glimmer of light the far side of town, and she heard a beautiful child's voice singing, Hark now, hear the angels sing, glory to the newborn King. She had never heard such a clear and a pure voice, and soon the voice started drawing closer to Effie. And as she peered out into the snowstormy night, she saw rosy cheeks, and she saw a wreath of berries around the head, and she saw a magical candle that was emitting some beautiful golden light. So Effie stood there, frozen, literally and otherwise, looking at this beautiful person that was coming toward her. And when the little fairy came closer, she heard footsteps behind and saw a man whose voice was so warm and kind that it did tingly things to her heart. And the man said, You must be little Effie. I've come looking for you. You are lost and you are cold and you are hungry, and I must solve all these three problems at once. So with a wave of the magic candle, the snow around Effie's hair became a beautiful coat. A warm bowl of soup appeared near her lips that she licked with great gusto. And soon her heart was experiencing gladness. It was not sad anymore. And Effie said, Will you please tell me who you are? And the man said, Well, Effie, I'm a Christmas spirit. Do you want to come and see where I live? And Effie said, yes, 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 I want to. And she put her hands in his hand and they quickly went towards the village. And what she saw in the village was a sight for eyes that do not believe in the magic of Christmas. Christmas trees, end to end, lit up with beautiful bulbs. Toys of every manner and every kind, sugar plums, blueberries, oranges, candied apples, and little angels flying here and there, and the sound of bells ringing that made Effie's heart so merry. And soon she saw four gates open, and out flew reindeer with not one, but with four Santa Clauses. She looked at the Christmas spirit and said, I thought Santa Claus was just a humbug, but they're real and there are four of them. And the Christmas spirit said, Effie, if you will only believe in the simple things of life, they are really miracles, you know. Do you want to see more? And Effie said, yes, I want to see more. So the door opened once again, and she saw house full of dolls, dolls and doll houses with each doll doing their own thing, buying tea, buying a pound of meat, walking from store to store. But the manners of these dolls were more pleasing than men, and she made a mental note to go back and tell her friends. Now, the Christmas spirits were busy working. Some were sewing warm clothes, some were putting money in envelopes, some were writing checks, some were making presents, some were preparing hampers. And Effie was seized by the Christmas spirit. She wanted to sing and dance and enjoy the season. And soon, the Christmas spirit led her to a part of town that was dark and grey with no tinge of the red and green. It was made up of mothers looking for bread and meat with holes in their jackets. It was made up of men who were lying drunk and babies who were snuggled under thin, thin blankets, weeping from hunger. And Effie saw beautiful faces running in and out of these houses, making their Christmas extra special with tricks and treats that she would have thought normal. And in the morning, when she woke up, she said, Mama, Mama, I've had this dream and I know how I can make people's Christmases special. But I don't have a magic candle, Mama. Neither do I have rows of Christmas trees or toys to give these people. And Mama quickly came up with a plan. And she said, Effie, all you need to do is go shopping. Well, if somebody said that to me, I'd be a very happy person today, but nobody does. So she went shopping with Nanny and she brought loads of toys and bunnies and boats and cars and, everything that a stocking could hold, but she could not see where these things were going. Finally, on Christmas Day, Mama said, Effie, I want you to wear this beautiful white gown and a wreath of Christmas berries around your head, and I'm going to take you blindfolded to some place. And Effie couldn't tolerate the surprise. She said, tell me now, Mama, tell me, what are we going to do for Christmas Day? And soon, Effie was blindfolded and she was led to this dark, dark room. And when her blindfold came off, she saw rows of Christmas trees that were lit up with bulbs and stockings stuffed with toys. And she saw beautiful little children sitting in front of her. Mama said, Effie, you've had a wonderful dream. And that dream is to give the gift of joy to people who don't deserve it, people who can't afford it. Go ahead, Effie. Be the fairy in your Christmas. Be that same spirit of Christmas that gives and that blesses and that doesn't hoard in difficult times like these. So Effie began distributing those toys one by one, and she saw the children's eyes light up with laughter. And she was feeling so happy. She had never felt happy in her entire life the way she was right now. And at the end of it, a very small little girl came up to Effie and planted a kiss on her cheek and said, you are my Christmas fairy, because I got everything that I wanted to this Christmas, which I could have never had. And I see you have no presents. Will you please keep this little sugar plum fairy in your hands and remember me when I'm gone? Tears started pouring down Effie's eyes. And Mother said, Effie, I've given you the largest surprise that you wanted, and you also have the smallest surprise that you're holding in the palm of your hands. Merry Christmas, Effie, and I hope you have a one that is blessed with the joy of giving to others and enriching your life. So, on that note, my friends, I want to wish you a very Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year where we don't have problems that are so difficult for us that we cannot bear them, and where there are smiles on your faces, and where the road rises up to meet you, and the sun warms your back gently, and the wind is just right for you to take a walk. And acting on the advice of Usha, உலகமெங்கும் கேட்டுக்கொண்டிருக்கிற தமிழ் மக்களுக்கு என்னுடைய இனிய கிறிஸ்துமஸ் மற்றும் புத்தாண்டு வாழ்த்துக்கள். இந்த ஆண்டானது உங்களுக்கு இனிய அமைய என்னுடைய உள்ளம் கவர்ந்த வாழ்த்துக்கள். Thank you very much, and back to you, Usha.
Thank you. And how do I say it in Tamil? Thank you in Tamil. What's happening to me? I'm getting வணக்கம்.
நன்றி.
நன்றி, ரொம்ப நன்றி. நீங்க தமிழ்ல எல்லாரையும் புத்தாண்டு வாழ்த்துக்கள் எல்லாருக்கும் நீங்க சொன்னேள் as well. And what a beautiful note to end our evening, the joy of giving. So I don't want to add any more to what Sandhya has already said. Let us reflect on those words and let's go out and share our joy, our love, and the joy of giving for the next week. And you will find that it enriches you and makes you feel so happy. And on that note, Sandhya, Storytellers Cafe is very, very happy that you graced our studios and shared two wonderful gems. You know, the last story was beautiful. It's so perfect for the Christmas, the whole, it set the scene for Christmas. So thank you for that. And viewers, stay tuned for the 27th of December. We have Rosemary Somaya from Singapore gracing our studios and sharing some stories, some personal stories. So stay tuned. And I hope to see you all on the 27th of December. And Sandhya, thank you once again. And that's a wrap from Storytellers Cafe, Bharat FM. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
This is Bharat FM.
बजेगा भारत, झूमेगा भारत.
ये है भारत FM.
बजेगा भारत, झूमेगा भारत.